That was the Adagietto from Mahler's Fifth Symphony with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. This is The Green Room. I'm Caitlin Matson, joined by Maestro Daniel Hege from the Wichita Symphony Orchestra. Hello, Daniel.
Hello, Caitlin. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for being with us again. Uh, Here we are. We got through the holiday, ready to start
Good.
again with a brand new Masterworks concert coming up on the 22nd, an afternoon in Paris. What is on the program?
Well, it's all French, as you might guess from the title of the program, An Afternoon in Paris. In fact, I just want to mention to everyone, this is in the afternoon on a Sunday afternoon. Sometimes we perform on Saturday night at 7:30 p.m. and sometimes we perform at 3 p.m. on Sundays. This one is Sunday at 3 p.m. So the afternoon in Paris, an all-French program. We start off with a symphony by Louise Ferenc. She was a 19th century composer, born in 1801, died in 1875, so right over that 19th century period. And this is her third out of three symphonies that she composed. It's a wonderful piece. It sounds, if people want to know what it sounds like, think Mendelssohn, think Mozart, think Schubert. Great lyricism, poetry in the writing. One wonders why this piece is not heard more often. That's the first half. Then the second half of the program, we start with Ravel, Maurice Ravel, French composer, Le Tombeau de Couperin, which is a short, about 17-minute long suite. And then we end the program with Saint-Saëns Piano Concerto No. 2 in G minor with fabulous pianist Orion Weiss. So all French music, but all very, very different, one piece from another.
Let's start from the end and work our way to the beginning. Orion has been featured with the symphony before. In fact, when I was, preparing not only for this interview, but for the upcoming concert talks, I was reading about Orion Weiss and remembering that we actually had a Zoom call with him during our Symphony at Home broadcast series during the pandemic shutdown. He's no stranger to Wichita, the Wichita Symphony Orchestra.
He is not. In fact, I've worked with Orion a lot of times now, many times in Tulsa. We worked in New York together. I've just gotten to know his name over the years, and we usually got paired together as guests. I would be a guest conductor, and the orchestra where I was working would hire him as the guest soloist. So we got to know each other in that way. And then, of course, I discovered what just a huge talent he is and wanted to book him in other places. So we brought him to Wichita years ago. He played Mozart 24th Piano Concerto in C minor and was absolute poetry at the keyboard. And we wanted to bring him back. And this was our opportunity to bring him in for the Saint-Saëns Piano Concerto No. 2.
Tell us about the second piano concerto. What makes it stand out more than the first? Those of us who might not be as familiar with the piano works of Saint-Saëns, why the second? What should we be listening for?
Well, the Saint-Saëns wrote 5 piano concertos altogether, and he has subtitles for some of them. For example, the fifth one is the Egyptian. And the second one, though, is really the most popular. People know that one. If they think they don't know it, as soon as they hear it, they'll go, okay, I know this one. So because of its popularity, it's the one that's heard the most. And we hadn't performed the Saint-Saëns concerto for several years. We did No. 4 several years ago, but we thought No. 2 was so popular, we should definitely bring that one back. It's very interesting because the piece starts with a huge piano cadenza. So the soloist is just playing by himself for a couple of minutes there, and you almost wonder, what's the orchestra doing here? Because
2 minutes is a long time. You don't think
it's a
2 minutes
long
is a
time,
long time. It's a very long
but it
time in
is.
terms of music, especially.
Exactly. And it sounds very Baroque at the beginning. It sounds almost like Bach. In fact, one commentator said because of the variety of styles that one hears in this particular concerto, it sounds like it begins with Bach, but it ends with Offenbach. And that's because what's interesting about the form and the structure of this particular piece is that he starts with the first movement out of 3. That's standard for a concerto to have 3 movements. The first one is rather slow and rather brooding. It's very melodic and gorgeous. But then the second movement is fast, and then the third movement is even faster. So what we typically get in a concerto, conventional one, is to have the first movement rather fast. Then the second movement is slow, and then the last movement is fast again.
Mm-hmm.
So fast, slow, fast. In this case, it's slow, fast, and faster. So that's what's a little bit unusual about it. A lot of pyrotechnics for the pianist, a lot of gorgeous melodies for the orchestra, and Saint-Saëns is really at his best writing, I think, with this piano concerto.
That's exciting. And starting off the concert, Louise Ferenc's Symphony Number 3. We'll dive into her and her life as a composer a bit deeper. Let's hear a couple minutes of this third symphony. This is kind of, if you had to peg one of her best known works, this would be it, would you think?
This and perhaps a nonette that she wrote. She was also known for writing great chamber music and great solo piano music, in addition to her 3 symphonies and 2 overtures. I think the third symphony probably gets the most play time, but that I have to back up a little bit from that because she is not getting as much airtime as she should. She should be getting
Right.
a
She's
lot more
brilliant.
attention.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. When you
Yeah.
hear the piece, you'll say, this is a masterwork. Why aren't we hearing this more often right along the composers like Mendelssohn or Schubert?
Exactly. And how wonderful that we are programming these incredible women composers and getting their works out to audiences and listeners, letting them know, hey, if you loved this guy, you're going to love her.
Yes, absolutely. And yet she has a voice all of her own. I mean, obviously music written around a similar time is going to have similar elements that sound similar, like the grammar of the harmonies and things like that, and
Yeah,
the
the
form,
structure.
Yeah, those things are going to be similar, but within that, she is so imaginative with colors and how she varies the melodies and everything. It's really, really tremendous work.
Well, let's hear a bit of the finale of her third symphony. This is Louise Ferenc's third symphony, the Allegro, Johannes Gurutzky leading the Hanover Radio Philharmonic. And we'll be right back with Daniel Hege. That is the finale of Louise Ferenc's third symphony with the Hanover Radio Symphony Orchestra. That symphony is programmed on January the 22nd, the Wichita Symphony Orchestra's next Masterworks concert. Daniel Hege is with me, Maestro Daniel Hege. Let's run down exactly when it is, the day, the time, and the place.
It is on Sunday, January 22nd at Wichita Symphony at Century 2 Concert Hall at 3 p.m. And of course, you and I, and probably someone else we may invite out there, probably Orion Weiss, our guest, will be out there speaking beforehand at 2 o'clock.
That's right. We have a concert talk 1 hour before the downbeat where Daniel and sometimes Holly joins us, or whatever guest artist is there that day, are so generous with their time to come out and give a little, behind the scenes tidbits, Jeopardy information, things to enhance the listening experience. And it's so much fun to kind of dive a bit deeper into the pieces. The pieces on this concert. Well, first, if you want tickets, go to wichitasymphony.org, wichitasymphony.org, or call the Symphony box office at 316-267-7658. The program, not only Louise Ferenc's Symphony Number 3, and she is, just this powerhouse of a woman composer. She was a teacher at the Paris Conservatory, is that right, as well? She was very well known, a publisher. They had a publishing house, she and her husband.
Yes. Yeah. Her husband is about 10 years older than her. And she met him at the conservatory, actually, where she was studying piano. And they toured a lot, playing flute and piano duets. And then he just got tired of that touring life and he wanted to start a publishing house. So he did, and she helped him do that. But she became so famous as a pianist, actually, that's when the Paris Conservatory asked her if she would be professor there. And which is kind of interesting because about 20 years earlier, she was there studying as a prodigy, about 15, 17 years old. And she could not even take classes with the men because women were not allowed to take the classes with the men at that time. So she is quite a pioneer.
Yeah.
So she studied with professors from the conservatory, but we don't know that she was able to take any classes at all. And then 20 years later, look how things had changed for her. She was able to be a full professor there at the conservatory, teaching piano, but also composing on the side.
Fantastic, and just such a fantastic composer. So the second piece on the program is Maurice Ravel, and you had mentioned that the piano concerto, the Camille Saint-Saëns Piano Concerto Number 3, you had mentioned it starts out, and it almost sounds like you're listening to a Baroque piece, something by Bach, and that triggered, this bit of knowledge about Maurice Ravel and this work that the symphony is performing, the Tomb of Couperin.
Mm-hmm.
And can you enlighten us a bit about why it's titled that?
Sure.
And he kind of wanted to give a nod towards these Baroque themes, Baroque music, and how
Mhm.
that is kind of woven into the piece.
Sure. There are two distinct things that are going on with this piece. First of all, Ravel wanted to write a piece in the style of a Baroque French suite, like a keyboard suite. And so without paying homage to Couperin himself, Couperin was known as kind of the great or the best at writing these Baroque French keyboard suites. So Ravel decided that he would write something in the style of that. So it has Baroque dances
Mm.
throughout, and there are 4 movements. Now, originally he wrote this as a piano piece. So that's the first distinct thing, is the homage toward Couperin and the Baroque style. The second distinct thing is that he wanted to write a memorial for the friends that he lost in World War I, because the piece was written between 1914 and 1917. And he lost 6 friends, probably more than that, but he memorialized 6 of his friends with each of the movements that he wrote for the piano suite, which is what he wrote first. And so when we say Le Tombeau de Couperin, we're
Hmm.
talking about 2 things at once. We're talking about the tomb, or a memorial, though
Yes.
that would be for his friends, and then de Couperin would be in the style of Baroque music.
And in the French language, the French vernacular, saying the tomb, le tombeau, doesn't
Mhm.
have to mean literally a literal tomb. It often just means in memory of.
Right, in memory of these friends. So he wrote the piano suite first, and it took him over those 3 years, 1914 and 1917. Then a couple of years later, 1919, he took 4 of those movements and he orchestrated them. And Ravel is one of the greatest orchestrators who ever lived. And so knowing that he took his own piano piece and then he orchestrated it, it was in the hands of a master in both situations, both as a pianist and also for orchestra. The piece is so delightful. It's actually written for a fairly small chamber orchestra, which is why it fits on this program so well, because we don't really have a large orchestra for this concert. It's a pretty conventional size. Ravel wrote a lot of music for large orchestra. We're talking like 4 bassoons and 8 horns and 5 trumpets, I mean, massive
Yes.
scale. And so for Ravel to write something that was fairly compact like this with the 4 movements is really delightful, and is so transparent.
It sounds like a wonderful afternoon. Afternoon in Paris, Sunday afternoon, January the 22nd, beginning at 3 o'clock. WichitaSymphony.org, a good place to go to buy tickets, or if you want to do it over the phone, call 316-267-7658. And I'm just going to, we'll mention this for maybe 30 seconds. What's going on the night before?
The night before, we have a fundraiser um, to benefit educational community engagement in the Wichita community and through the Wichita Symphony. So
Ah,
it's a
that means for the
fundraiser.
kids.
Yes, it's for the kids and for community engagement in general. So we have a very strong educational program at the Wichita Symphony with 3 levels of youth orchestra, and the Wichita Symphony also performs for about 12,000 students live in the hall every year. So we want to make sure that that stays intact and keeps thriving as much as it is. So this Savor the Symphony is on Saturday night, the 21st, from 6:30 to 9:30, and it's a very wonderful meal with an auction and performances from Orion Weiss. It's on the stage of Century 2 Symphony Hall. So check it out. Go to wichitasymphony.org if you want to learn more information about that. But that's a wonderful fundraiser for the Wichita Symphony Education Program.
And I'm going to plug your very first broadcast, which is tomorrow night. The first broadcast of the 2022-23 season Symphonie Fantastique is
Uh,
tomorrow night, starting at 7 o'clock. with pianist John Nakamatsu performing the Rachmaninoff Rhapsody. So be tuning in there.
Yes, yes, please be
Daniel,
listening for that.
oh yeah. Daniel, thank you. Thank you as always for coming on and telling us all about what's coming up. And we look forward to an afternoon in Paris on January the 22nd.
Okay, thank you, Caitlin.
Mhm.